Now, welcome to another Thor and Naboo random review, where this time it is the Dungeons and Dragons film, Honor Among Thieves. And do be warned, if you haven't seen this film yet and you're going to see it and you don't want anything ruined, you might want to click away and come back to this review after you have seen it, because major spoilers ahead. Alright, so what did you think of this film?
I thought it was fun. I thought it was a really nice adventure movie that had its comedy moments, it had its serious moments. It did have some definite Dungeons and Dragons moments.
Oh, it had a lot of Dungeons and Dragons moments.
But there were definitely some things I would have seen them improve.
I absolutely loved the movie. I have been very skeptical, especially when I saw that it was going to be more comedic. I was thinking, oh, you're going to take a more serious tone on Dungeons and Dragons of the Forgotten Realms, which is what this movie is set in, and they do remind you of that every 5 words or so.
Which is kind of nice in a way. They're talking about places that exist, and
It is. It's nice, yet at the same time, it's like, I mean, I didn't mind it. I liked it. But at the same time, it's so frequent that you're like, oh, geez, they're going to literally name every place in the world, aren't they? But it's fine. It's fine. They went to many of these places, too. It was very cool. But I actually thought this was like Dungeons and Dragons brought to film. This is how people, at least in my experience, this is how people kind of play the game. It felt like the game brought to screen.
I was disappointed with the fact that they seemed to set it up for a sequel that may not ever happen.
Yeah, I don't think it did quite as well as they were hoping at the box office this past weekend.
I think there's even 3 or 4 books that they made that are preludes to this.
Really?
Yeah, because I read the synopsises on them, so as soon as I saw the tiefling and she said the Emerald Enclave, I was like, oh, that's from the book. Because they've each got like a little backstory type book, I think.
Interesting.
The 4 main characters, anyway. Because, much to my dismay, the Paladin was really cool, and I loved that, but he wasn't around quite as long as I would have wished.
The Paladin was amazing.
He was a showstopper.
He was how everybody who loves to roleplay a Paladin plays a Paladin. That's kind of how I felt about it. Who likes to play a genuine Paladin, not any kind of weird, like I'm a Paladin of, I know they're in like 5e rules, but like the Paladin of Vengeance or something. No, this was like old school Paladin character.
Right,
and it was perfect.
But unfortunately, he wasn't in there long enough to see a full story develop for him, because we got the backstory and we know what he's doing now. But he had more going on that they probably would get into in the sequels, because he was clearly touched by the Red Death thing, where he's partially undead or something. He does have something going on, but they never got into that, because I feel like they were setting that up for future, which may never happen.
May never. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the budget was on this. I don't know what I haven't really.
Didn't Hasbro sell their motion picture company?
Hasbro's had all kinds of weird. So I have no idea what the future of this film is or the film franchise is. I know Hasbro has talked. I think they sold their E1 or whatever the film studio was called. I don't know. I'm sorry, I haven't kept up with all of it. But I liked what I saw. Speaking of the Paladin, he's probably still walking. In a straight line.
Hey, we saw him. He walked all the way to the Lord there, con man. He walked straight in a line right to him. I like it. I liked seeing all the spells. I liked that you could tell a lot of times what classes people were.
Yeah.
I was disappointed in the Bard.
Because he didn't really do any Bard things?
Any Bard
other than sing and play the lute?
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing a Bard right now in our Curse of Strahd campaign, and I have all of these cool abilities and things that I do. Yes, they're not like, I'm a cool fighter and stuff, but I do a lot of, kind of buffing and debuffing. Yeah. But he, didn't really do any of that. Like, he could have used Vicious Mockery in the close-up fight they had in Neverwinter, when he and Holga, our barbarian fighter person, when those two were fighting because they were going to get killed in the alleyway. He could have done some Vicious Mockery and maybe distracted a few for her, and we would have been like, but he didn't do any of his things.
Is it wrong that I liked Holga's attraction to halflings?
No,
is this something weird about me?
It was fun. It was fun. I liked that, actually. I thought that was kind of a cool aspect.
It was so weird, but there were a lot of weird things in the movie, but they all worked. For me, anyway. I don't know. I have no idea what others. I haven't watched any reviews or read any reviews. All I know is I really enjoyed it.
I thought it was really creative that they made sure that the backstories of the characters mattered and what classes they were.
Oh my god, the backstories. That felt so much like modern day D&D to me. Like, let me tell you my epic backstory of tragedy and why I adventure. That was so great that's the way the movie started, because so many campaigns nowadays. And mind you, I'm someone who's played D&D for over 30 years at this point. So I remember back in the day, you didn't really care about backstory. You just rolled something up and went into a dungeon and died a lot of the time. So it was kind of hilarious to me to see, like, this is my epic, tragic backstory. And then at the very end of the movie, I even like at the end when he's talking, when Forge is talking about his new backstory about how he got arrested and all. I don't know. It just reminded me of the way people kind of play modern day D&D with always having to have that story about why they adventure instead of just, going with it.
Well, I like that they didn't min-max these characters either.
No.
I'm just saying, because a tiefling with the charisma modifier that they have generally wouldn't go into druid.
You're assuming she has a high charisma.
Well, tieflings, that's a tiefling racial bonus.
Well, we don't do racial bonuses anymore.
We do in 5e, which is what this movie is based on.
I don't even know we do it in 5e anymore. They don't like to...
Well, you know what I'm saying, is a tiefling would have a charisma bonus, so they generally wouldn't become a druid, but because the backstory was more important, they're a druid anyway.
Yeah.
I like it. Then we have the half-elf wild mage. I like that he even referenced wild mage. I was like, they referenced so many things.
There was a ton of references in this. So many that I'm sure I missed plenty of them, but still caught a ton.
And I like how the creatures were, like, included. How, they were there. You could see some of them. They didn't mention what they were exactly, but then you'd see other ones and you're like, oh, well, I know what that is. I like that the displacer beasts did their displacing. I was like, oh, that's nice. Like, they could have just made them as, look, it's like a panther with tentacles and it charged. No, they made sure to use the abilities that the creatures had, not just the characters.
Yeah. I thought the best little fun Easter egg was the characters from the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Oh, yes. They were in there. That was so cute.
You catch a glimpse of them, I'm like, no, that isn't them. It's exciting.
It is.
The one that stood out was I can't remember his name now, the Cavalier from the show. It's going to kill me that I don't remember his name. He's got, like, the blue and the red and all that. I'm like, and then I saw, like, the little short Barbarian and the green. And I'm like, oh, my God, they did not. They did not put them in there.
Well, and you saw them again because they were in the cage ready to go to the next round.
Yeah, that's what I knew for sure. Well, they opened a chest at one point and he had
because they were grabbing out their weapons.
Yes, I was like, oh my God, they're going deep.
I love that.
I loved it. I am stunned right now how much I enjoyed this movie. It had heart. It had a lot of fun. It was an adventure. It had so many little cool references. Again, maybe a little too many at times, but wow.
One thing I would have loved to see is when you have those groups that are all competing in the Sunfest thing, which name I can't remember already, but we saw the original cartoon D&D. I would have loved if another cage had the characters from Vox Machina, if they would have included them.
That would have been
awesome.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
There's wrong over there?
I think there's some issues there, but yeah.
Well, maybe not.
Yeah, but no, that would have been fun.
Mhm. I expected to see a lot of cameos from celebrities who D&D, and either I just didn't notice them, which is good, or they weren't there. Like, I kept expecting, like, where's my boy Joe?
Yeah.
Where are you? And there were a couple of the CGI, the creature characters, and I was like, that kind of sounds a little like him, but I haven't looked up yet if he was in there.
I have no idea if they had any of, like, those kind of cameos now.
No, it was a good, fun time. I like that the trailers didn't ruin the story. Like, there was a lot more to the story than the trailers implied.
There a ton more, because I didn't realize it was about, like, his daughter and all of that was...
his wife and...
Yeah. Killed by the Red Wizards of Thay.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool that we go into this and we're like, okay, well, it's a story about thieves. They did something wrong. They have to make it right.
Well, that's kind of how the trailer implied. I mean, that is the case because they did.
That is what the trailer implied. Yeah. But there was so much deeper stuff to it. I mean, with hearing about the Harpers and...
Yeah,
I was like, there was a lot. And I liked that they made a fully functional D&D world that we could look at and go, that's what it is.
It's the Forgotten Realms. That's what it is.
And we know from an interview that the dungeon that they're in at the very beginning, the Rime of the Frostwind dungeon, the big prison place, that was made for this movie. Literally, the creators have sat down and said, well, when they were making this movie, somebody said, hey, do we have a prison, anything kind of like this? And they're like, no, but we'll make one. And then they made one, and they made a whole campaign around it you can play through in Rime of the Frost Maiden.
Yeah.
And that was made for this movie just years in advance. I was like, that's cool.
Very cool.
That's cool that there is an actual dungeon in the game now that you can play through that is that dungeon from... I was like, that's cool. I just need to find me a journal.
I mean, it's kind of weird because they almost take this big tour of everything that I think most players associate with the Forgotten Realms. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we've got like Neverwinter, Baldur's Gate. You know, we're going up and down the Sword Coast.
The Underdark.
The Underdark, we go there. We don't see
Mm-hmm.
any drow or anything, which is a little... I guess they can't have it all. But, no, I mean, it's weird how much they crammed in there, and yet I didn't feel like it was too much or that it kind of was too hokey. Again, there are a lot of references, but it did, for the most part, work.
I'm curious how this fan goes over with people who aren't D&D familiar.
That's
if they will
what I'm
appreciate
curious.
it the same way that people who obviously play the game appreciate it. Because I'm trying to think, if I didn't know D&D, would I enjoy this movie the same? I don't know. Would I find it a little too predictable or too hokey or be like, well, why doesn't this work like this? I don't know.
It was predictable, though, with the bringing somebody back. I knew one of them was going to die, and he would use it on her instead of bringing her back. 'Cause, I mean, that was kind of so telegraphed, but that's fine.
It is fine, because that's the family that they built. So.
Yeah.
It even goes back to the Paladin saying, she's in a different place. Would you want to
you
tear
wanna rip
her
her
away
back
from that?
from-
And then
yeah.
the reference with the little dragonfly, the blue dragonfly that kind of he sees at key moments. It was nice.
You gotta let it go. That was the message. It was very well written. I mean, just little tiebacks, and this was impressive. This was not the Dungeons and Dragons movie from 20 years ago.
Let's not talk about that, because that just
my
tarnishes
God.
everything, doesn't it?
That was the worst thing I've ever seen, I think. So bad.
So in the game, can I have a hither wand?
Sure.
I really want one.
I loved how creative they were, which is another D&D thing.
Yes.
Players can be
100%.
extremely creative, and they were that.
Yes, they had all these plans, and I'm like, that's not uncommon either. Where you make like 8 plans, and you're like, oh yeah, these aren't working.
You make the
Next.
plan, then it goes into motion, and it falls apart, and everybody just does their thing. Yeah, that's D&D.
It was great because it felt like people playing, a game in some sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well, with that being said, it's probably time to go to the hammer scale.
Ooh.
It's 1 through 10 on the hammer scale.
Ooh. I'm going to go on personal enjoyment, 9.5. I loved it.
Wow, that's
I
really,
actually
I
really
like
loved
hearing
it.
that from you.
I'm stunned right now. I went in here very skeptical, and I'm coming out hoping this gets a sequel.
I think I will go with, I'm going to give it 9 hammers. I feel like I missed some references, which made me a little sad, and I worry about its ability to gain a sequel. I feel like the sequel is going to be very important because I feel like some of the storylines got left out or just will be saved for the next installment, and if it doesn't get made, I'll be disappointed. So I'm going to give it a 9 because I wanted to know more of this big story that's happening, but we saw a small piece of.
Yeah, I'm curious you mentioned it, I'm curious to see people who have never played D&D, what they thought of this movie.
Yes, that's something I'd love to see
Because
here as well.
that's going to be the key, right? If people who don't play the game don't like it, or if people who do play the game didn't like it, I don't know. If you're not attracting an audience beyond the game, I think this thing is just destined for failure, or the franchise is destined for failure. But anyway, let's stay positive, and that's going to be all we got for you this time. So now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell us what you thought of this movie. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Have you played D&D? And if so, did that at all sway how you felt about it? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some D&D. And until next time, thanks for watching.